You mentioned earlier, and it's the first time in our conversation. I believe it was Russia or Germany. But typically, whenever I hear about downed spacecrafts, mysteriously, it always happens in the U.S.
Oh no, it's happened all over the world.
Not sightings. I'm talking about downed.
I am too.
So you're saying outside of the U.S.?
Oh, multiple. Yeah.
Really?
Yep. South Africa,
Okay.
Africa, Russia, Germany.
Okay. Yeah. So do they have the same technologies that we have?
This gets complicated.
Okay.
The organization we're talking about is transnational. It's not only U.S., meaning that it has corollaries and components in every country. And it moves with alacrity, freedom, across all political boundaries. So when I was up at a skiff a couple years ago with some guys, intelligence guys, and I said, you see that map of the world behind you right up there above the conference table? Take all the lines between all the countries, erase them. Because the organization who is running this operation is transnational, not international. Big difference. International is like U.S. to Canada, da-da-da. This is transcends those boundaries. So you have to understand the architecture, the structure of this organization, which I understand very, very well. And so, for example, we have operations in Mexico, out at Fort Huachuca, which was Army Intelligence Headquarters out in the desert of Arizona. There's a DUM, a deep underground military base storage area there, has a man on my team who was there in the 70s. There were 9 extraterrestrial vehicles that were stored there and dead extraterrestrial bodies that had been dissected and autopsied, whatever. Many of those had been pulled out of Latin America or Mexico and brought back and were moved across borders. I think, we're trained to think in our high school civics lesson about geopolitics and political and boundaries. You got to erase that when you're dealing with this particular these operations. And that's another big problem for the United States government, is I've warned them, you're going to have to take a global approach to this eventually. First, you need to get your head around what's going on in CONUS, continental United States, and our security. But ultimately, you're going to have to consider the rest of the world. Because these operations, as I mentioned, the CIA document talks about going across the border into Brazil and Argentina, conducting abductions on innocent civilians for their psychological warfare value. So these operations are not restricted to the United States, nor have the downing and retrieval of these objects been restricted to the United States. So that's another whole layer of discussion. It's hard to make this so complex, but it is complex. It's just
it's extremely complex.
Extraordinarily.
And it really
shootings and stabbings were easier, my friend. Give me a good old fashioned, gunshot wound to the chest. But no, I think that it is very, very complex, and it isn't what people are trained to think. So part of the problem.
Well, that's part of the complexity of it all. Is you literally have to unlearn everything that you've been taught. You have to go into this with an open mind, because even me sitting here before you, I know you're a medical doctor. You are highly intelligent. But I have to, and I say this with all of the respect, and I have been following you for years. I have to say, you're speaking about things that in some ways can sound like conspiracy theory.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
In other ways, I would have to question your own sanity. Is this guy, is he with us, or is he just so far out there that he actually sounds intelligent saying the things that he's saying? So,
it's all true, and we can document it. The nice thing about the things I'm sharing is that I have documentation for all of it. Not that you can do that in a 2-hour show, but I think that's what I'm providing to people in the U.S. government. Here are the files, here are the witnesses. Here are the people who handled this directly. So I think that's where it has to be. It has to be evidence-based. Now, what I'm giving you are the assessments and the big picture here. But I'm trying to illustrate it with various examples, like this Marine who came across this Indonesian trafficking and the use of one of these objects, which anyone who would look at it and how it took off,
are we talking about the Tic Tac video?
No, I'm talking about the Marine that was in Indonesia with the apparently human trafficking and the big UFO during the tsunami that I just referred to. Michael Herrera, it's up on our YouTube channel. His interview was just done at the National Press Club in Washington. It's there free for anyone to see. I tell people, don't take my word for it. I have 70 or 80 of these firsthand military guys up on our YouTube channel. But I think that it is hard because everyone has been sold sort of a mythology and been kept in an information blackout for 70, 80 years. So how do you catch up for 70 or 80 years of lies and brainwashing and disinformation? It's hard, but we don't have 70 or 80 more years to fritter away. Here's the problem. So my issue, and I very much appreciate what you're saying. In 1991, an intelligence official said to me, he said, Dr. Greer, if you tell the public the truth about this, you will be discredited because the truth is much more bizarre than the fiction we've been selling.
Correct.
Right? So, but that puts you in a double bind. It's a catch-22. I am not going to any longer hold back on what the full information on this is, because this is all coming out now. I mean, even the mainstream media is covering it with their spin and filters. But the Congress and people in the Pentagon who are looking into this in great depth are now finding out about this. And so, we don't have another decade or even another year or two, I think, to fritter time away. I think we're going to have to move quickly. And yes, it's going to be a bit of a future shock to people, but it's got to happen, because the world most people believe now is the equivalent of, when we thought the earth was flat, or that the sun went around the earth. And remember, 500 years ago, Galileo was excommunicated by the church for daring to suggest that the planets went around the sun. That was heresy. That was completely too mind-boggling. That was just about 500 years ago. So I think we have to begin to think very critically, critical thinking. But what I tell people is that look at the evidence. I mean, we have 5 books that are out. We have these 5 documentaries. This new one on the lost century and how to reclaim it has just come out. Anyone can look at it. And it documents this 100 years of this technology being developed. But also, the nice thing about it, it looks into the future. It looks at 10 years, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 years from now. What is this planet going to look like when we disclose finally this information? And with it, the energy technologies that would give us a completely different planet. And that's, ironically, the old cartoon, the Jetsons, George Jetson. What was being portrayed in the early 60s there, that technology existed at that time. It literally existed. It was a cartoon, but it actually was stuff that we had.
And I remember the Jetsons. Yeah. Meet George Jetson.
George Jetson.
There you go.
So go look at the cartoon. Flying around, flying these things. I mean, of course, it's a comedy and cartoon, but that actually could have been in the 60s. Because we mastered the technologies between 1945 and 54.